Yeah,
Would you like to stand?
I don't know, maybe at some point, maybe we'll switch that up.
Okay, look it up.
Good to be with you guys, thanks for coming over from football here. Quick updates on just a couple things. Obviously, we don't have a ton to talk about here, but a few updates on some things here. Hope everybody has had a good start to your summer. It's been good last few weeks to a couple of months for our guys. I think they've had a chance to get home and spend some time. All of our returners are here right now, as well as Ibrahima, because of he needed to get here a little bit early. So all of our returners are on campus as of yesterday, and Ibrahima. Our whole team will be here in a couple weeks. The freshmen as well as Justice will be here in a couple weeks. So it's good to have them back. Coaches have been getting some time away with their families, spending some vacation time, although as you know, that's always limited for coaches, but it's been a good last couple months here. Obviously Caleb Wesson went through the NBA draft process, and that was good. I think he received some really valuable information in that process, and I think it was really helpful. As I said in the statement, I thought he and his family really went about that process in a great way. They were thoughtful, regular communication, really had I think a good understanding of kind of what it was going to look like at the end, and it was good. I'm sure he would have loved to maybe had a couple more workouts than what he did, but we got great feedback from the workouts, and we got great feedback from other NBA teams who had seen him. So I think his intent all along was to kind of go through this, but in all likelihood return, and that's certainly been the case. Excited about the addition of Jake Diebler to our staff. Obviously his hiring here a month or so ago. Jake obviously has great affinity for Ohio State, but more importantly, I'm not hiring somebody just because they love Ohio State. He's good at what he does, and he's effective at what he does, and has proven that. And obviously I think his experiences, even some of the really stuffs, he had a tough season last year, and I think going through that experiences provides a lot of benefit. And he's a really eager young coach who we're super excited about having him, Jordan and James with us. The schedule is close to being complete, not there yet, but it's close. We should know something on our ACC opponent in a day or so, right, Dan? I had one of our staff guys say to me, we were talking about who to scrimmage, and he said, well, we might as well just scrimmage the Warriors, given our schedule. So he doesn't quite align with me in terms of scheduling, and I appreciate that. That differing opinion, but we'll talk more about the schedule in greater detail down the road, but it's a monster. So, and I can talk a little bit about that if you want. And I think that's it for me, so I'll open up for questions. Hey, Don.
Coach, what did Caleb learn, do you think? What does he need to work on? And what we, I guess you try to do with him to get to what he needs to work on this season? And how will that help you guys?
Yeah, good question. So, when you're talking with NBA people, it's interesting because when you go through this process, there are sometimes that feedback that they get, coaches worry, I think, sometimes that it would contradict what they're saying. Maybe they want to see them play a different position, or maybe they want to see something different. In Caleb's case, and Keith, his dad and I have had a lot of conversations, so much of what they're saying that he needs to get better at really certainly benefits him, but it benefits our team. And it's all the things that he's heard: fitness, defending ball screens. Ball screen defense has become a constant, and he knows that. Caleb knows that. And he did make improvements. There's no question he made improvements in his mobility and his ball screen defense from year 1 to year 2, from his freshman to sophomore year. But those things continued. They like the fact that his skill level is what it is. I think they'd like to see his turnovers go down a little bit more, his rebounding increase a little bit. Not one time did scoring come up. I think they know that he's capable of scoring. That didn't come up. It really came up fitness, ball screen defense. He shot it, I think I'm allowed to say this, really well in his Boston workout. And I think there was probably some nerves in his first workout with Atlanta. So those are the main things.
He's talked a lot about adding explosiveness. Is that a big key as far as the summer, maybe trying to get a little bit more around the rim?
Yeah, I think that's when people look at him, they're saying, okay, where is his lift around the rim? We laugh because he loves to say, Coach, I'm not Clint Capella. I'm like, I know. So he knows who he is, but can he increase a little bit in his athleticism? I think that's the goal. I think fitness is tied into that, and I think strength and working with Q is really tied into that. But I also think he realizes that's not necessarily who he's not going to completely transform that part of who he is.
As a team, we don't have the foreign trip this summer like you did last year. How does that change, I guess, how you approach the summer, and where do you think you are as far as just kind of taking the next step from a maturity standpoint, maybe still being young, but not as maybe young as you were last year?
Yeah, I think we may be younger, actually. I'd have to look at it, but I was just talking to somebody who's taking their team on a foreign trip, and there's a lot of benefits to that. Obviously, you can only do it once every 4 years. We'll have to do some things this summer. We'll have to have some good practices this summer. 7 of our 12 available guys are going to be freshmen and sophomores. The good thing is that a lot of those freshmen were able to gain some valuable experience that are now sophomores. Old wins in college basketball, we know that. Look at the teams that advance, look at the teams that advance deep, look at the teams who have won the Big Ten. And I would challenge you to tell me, how many of those teams have been really young teams in the last 5-10 years. It just hasn't happened. So we need to get old, but that's going to take some time. We're not quite there yet, but that's kind of how we planned it too. We knew there was going to be a process of getting old.
Given that, how important was it to have a guy like Caleb back, who's a veteran guy, played 60-some games, I think, just his experience and leadership on this team?
Yeah, well, obviously really critical, but also if he said to me, hey, listen, I think this, and his family said, hey, I think this is in my best interest and makes a lot of sense for me, and certainly if he was projected to be a first-round pick, then I think, not always the case. There was a guy in our league who was projected to be a first-round pick. I believe the young man from Maryland was in all likelihood going to be a first-round pick, and he's coming back. So that's not always the case, but I think I'm fully supportive of those decisions if they choose to make that. But for him, I think to have some experience back, to have a guy that has been able to grow, and he's a really gifted player. So to have him back is really good. I think he learned a lot from this year, given that he was a sophomore and he was the primary attention of our defense. I think that was a real learning experience for him, and I think he took a lot from it, and we'll see if he can have a great summer.
Do you like the guy who's willing to put himself out there? And not that this is for everybody at that point in their career, but Caleb may or may not have been ready for this, yet he wanted to go and experience it.
You're talking about the NBA?
Yeah, just to feel that out and get that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm, like a angry parent when I hear, which I've experienced some angry parents in my time coaching, but I'm like an angry parent when I hear people criticize our players, and I'm not sure if he received criticism, but I hope he didn't for going through the process, because I think it makes sense. On the flip side of that, if you talk to people, and particularly if you talk to NBA personnel, they will tell you, most of them will tell you, make sure that when you, that you don't make yourself available too often. That there is a level of curiosity that is a good thing. And I think for certain players, you can lose a little bit of credibility if you're just throwing your name every year. It doesn't make sense for them individually, it just doesn't. In this case, I fully supported it. I thought it did make sense for him, I really did, and I think it was really beneficial and helpful.
Chris, as Caleb's workouts were with Atlanta and Boston, there's
Yep.
ties to the program, both those teams with Christian and then your relationship with Brad. Like, are you allowed to help him get those set up, or let him put in a word with franchises to help your guys get workouts?
Yeah, we can. I think there's some limitations in terms of how much we can do that. But really, both of those were, obviously I had talked to Brad throughout the year about our team and our guys. But I think both of those came about because they had interest in just kind of learning more about him. And not at the behest of any one of us. I think obviously Chris's connection with them, and then Brad's familiarity with our program. But I think in a lot of those cases, Bill, it's the scouting departments who are looking at it and saying, you know what, we kind of feel like this young man fits the direction. Listen, and Caleb and I have talked about this, is, there are gonna be some organizations that will not like his game. Just like some organizations don't like, they differ on the top 5 picks in the draft. There's gonna be others that really value what he brings and his skill. That's always gonna be true. That was the case last year with Keita. Some people just, they have differing opinions on what they're looking for. So, it just takes one, right? And I think both of those liked him for who he is as a player and who he's growing into.
And then it came out, I think it was yesterday, that you're gonna be coaching at the U19 camp
Yeah.
later this month. And that looks like it might coincide with when you guys get here
Yeah.
too. How much did you wrestle with whether or not to do that, given the timing of things?
I did. I really wrestled with it. Matt Painter called me and asked me if I would have interest. And, I actually I bounced around a little bit with our staff and said, hey, you think I should do this? This is right after Top 100 camp in Virginia. So it's right after that, and then it's the weekend that our freshmen arrive. So I was gonna turn it down. Initially, I just said I wasn't gonna do it, but it's USA basketball. It's hard to say no to USA basketball, and it's not hard to say no to Matt, but it's hard to say no to USA basketball. And I felt like it was something we needed to do.
You were saying that or Caleb knows who he is as a player, but at the same time, he's not who he wants to be.
Sure.
What does he have to do to get to that point where he's going to get better feedback in those NBA workouts? And was there anything, I know that you said that they said a lot of the same things that maybe you guys have been hitting on. Was there anything surprising that he learned that he didn't really expect?
He'd probably be better to answer that too. I think he was, in his first workout, he went against a couple guys that are not, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that are not gonna get drafted, and he's like, wow, these guys are pretty good players, And I think that's always eye-opening for young men when they go through this and like, whoa, that guy's not supposed to be, he's not even on the draft board, and he's pretty good. So I think that's always eye-opening for young people. But I think a lot of he's, as I talked about, he's a really smart kid, so he kind of knows. I think he went in knowing, probably because of how much we had said to him, he knew what they were gonna say: fitness, ball screen defense, continue to diversify your game a little bit, grow in your ability to now shoot the line, extend your range a little bit. And they talked to him a little bit about finishing as well, becoming a better two-point finisher. But I think a lot of the things that were said he expected.
You referenced the tough schedule. I know last year when you went into the non-conference schedule, you thought it would have been more daunting than it was, and you said that this team might be even more young. Was there any intention, knowing that? No, I don't know. We saw what happened when after non-conference last season, and sort of the wheels fell off for a bit in January and February. Did you want them to be challenged earlier? Was this intentional at all?
Some of that might be true. Yes, some of that might be true. Take your lumps, get feedback earlier in some ways that might be more helpful going into what I anticipate being another really, really good year in the Big Ten, although I think it was the deepest conference in the country. Will it be that way next year? I don't know. But yeah, there was some thought in that. And obviously, we don't have control over who we're playing in the Gavitt games, but I kept hearing Villanova, Providence or Creighton, but I kept hearing Villanova. And I knew they were going to be presumably a top 5, top 10 program. So that's good. But there are plenty of games on our schedule. I think Cincinnati's going to be really good. It's just, I don't know that I've experienced something this early in the season where it's going to be like, whoa, you were getting hit with some significant games within the first 2 weeks of the season.
NCAA could be extending the three-point line possibly today. Do you have any experience with the FIBA line as a coach?
Just in some international play, yeah. That's about it.
For a team that plays through a big man in the post, where three-point shooting is kind of key to helping an athlete face one-on-one, how does that help Caleb going forward when the line is a little bit further than maybe the defenders have?
It's going to be interesting to see how the line impacts our game. I think it will certainly create a little more space because everybody's going to be spaced now, or at least 2 or 3 offensive players at a time are going to be spaced behind that, in some cases 4 behind that line. So I think that creates some opportunities. I think honestly it also, shooting, people talk about it, really, it's going to be important to have guys that can shoot the ball and shoot it with range, but I think it's also going to be really important to have guys that can drive gaps and deck the ball, because there's going to be more space available potentially. We all know we struggle a little bit in that area this year, but I think that's going to be important to continue to recruit that.
You mentioned Diallo was here
Yes.
now, right? Can you remind us just on his background? Did he pick up the game in high school? Was that the first time he started playing?
Yeah, pretty late in his, pretty late for most kids. I think it was 7th, 8th grade is kind of when I think he, I actually just watched his first workout this morning. And just like all of us who are relatively new to Columbus and Ohio State, he's still finding his way around campus. He got lost yesterday. Unfortunately, had a campus policeman come by and give him a ride over to campus. So he's just now getting to, kind of figure out what all this place is about. But we're super excited to have him. But he is a pretty recent. He didn't grow up with a ball in his hand, so he's pretty recent to it.
I mean, I think you're always looking for depth at the 5 behind Caleb. I know that was a big concern this offseason. How do you kind of look at him as sort of like a blank canvas that you guys can mold, or like where are you with him and where does he factor in right now?
I think I'll know more after this summer. I think we'll all know more after this summer to see. He certainly presents the size and length. He's 6'11", and we're getting his measurables here I think in the next couple of days on length, but he's got really good length. I just think we'll know more here at the end of the summer in terms of how much we feel like he can impact things. I think that kind of remains to be seen, but he's got a great attitude, and we certainly expect that he's gonna provide some depth there that's gonna be needed. One of our, along with not having a backup to Caleb last year, our lack of length across the board was a little bit of an issue for us. So not only were we a little bit smaller when we played, when Caleb was out, but we didn't have great length at other positions. Whereas the year before, we had some versatility with positional length in terms of JT and Kada. So when a guy like Caleb was out, you still had good length at other positions. So hopefully our lineup, because we'll have some other guys that have good length, will be able to address that.
Chris, how much of a say do you have on the schedule? And there's different philosophies out there. Some coaches like to schedule the tough games throughout the non-conferences so they can gauge their club. What's your philosophy on it?
How much say do I have? 100%, pretty much. It's different, because I'm assuming, I don't know if that's the same in football or not. Basketball, it's usually the head coaches and their staff that are making those decisions on scheduling. If it's a good schedule, then we'll take credit. If it's a bad schedule, the guy in the back, David Egelhoff, will be the one who deserves the credit for that. No, it's us working as a staff, and David does a great job with scheduling. And it's interesting, there's some math that goes into it now. We go to Big Ten meetings and you hear these coaches and they're all talking about, scheduling, and you hear really a variety of opinions when you have 14 head coaches sitting and talking. And you hear a guy like Matt Painter who's talking about, don't schedule games versus these, opponents. And he's talking about, opponents that might, it hurts you if you schedule certain games like this. Talking about kind of the spectrum of Division I college basketball. And then other coaches are saying, I'm scheduling those games, like we need wins. And so I think it's interesting when you hear all that, you kind of look at the analytics behind it, because that's what you're considering. So long answer to, as I've said in the past, if I'm gonna err, and I think that remains in question here, did I make a mistake in the schedule for this upcoming season? It's going to be with providing a harder non-conference. And as you mentioned, I thought last year's was gonna be a harder non-conference. It just so happened that we played some teams that maybe didn't quite have the years that we thought they would. But I would like a harder, more challenging non-conference, I would.
Chris, in terms of allocation of duties, does Jake just sort of step into what Mike was doing, or are you tweaking that at all with the assistants?
Yeah, that's fairly fluid. It will change a little bit in terms of some of the positions that guys may work with. I've changed that up a little bit, some of our guys' position groups. But Mike did a great job in terms of, his appetite for recruiting was unbelievable. I'd always laugh because he would text me, page after page of recruits to text and call, every night. It was amazing. So that's going to be a significant role for Jake, to be a guy who comes in and has that appetite. And based on our research, I think he's prepared to do that.
I was wondering about that because where Mike has been, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but just where Mike was in his career before he came here,
Yeah.
I think he had a wider range of where he could go or where he's been in the past, and Jake has been Midwest, and obviously he was down in Nashville. Does that change your recruiting plan at all? Or do you still plan on casting a net wide if there's guys out in California or West Coast or whatever?
Yeah, you know, Mike did, because of his time at Stanford, so he had a broad network of national contacts. But you know, we certainly will recruit national, but I think we want to recruit regionally really effectively. You know, I think guys are gonna recruit where they have their connections and their contacts and where their network is strong. I like the other idea of adding another Ohio guy, but he also has some experience recruiting the Midwest and the Southeast. So I don't know that, you know, Mike had some connections that he doesn't have and vice versa, but I expect that we'll cast a similar net, maybe not quite as wide because of Mike, and maybe even focused a little more regionally.
And I know you were, I think up in Canton, maybe you talked about John Beeline, but I was just wondering if you know Juwan Howard at all and what you thought of Michigan hiring.
Yeah, so I don't know Juwan at all. You know, I had talked to John a couple weeks before he took the Cleveland job, and we actually talked about the Detroit job. And I got the impression then that if Detroit had offered him the job, he would have taken it last year. So I don't think at that time it hit me necessarily that he could be on his way out, but I think it put in my mind that potentially if an NBA job came open, he would take it. You know, what all went into that decision, he's the only one that knows. I know there's been speculation about frustration with some of the things that are going on in our game. I just think in a lot of ways for him it was another challenge and an opportunity he didn't feel like he and his family could pass up. As far as Juwan, it's obviously a really exciting hire for them. You know, I remember watching, obviously, who doesn't remember watching his teams, and I remember watching him in the NBA as well, and have immense respect for how he played. So it's an exciting time for them. I think it's good for our league, honestly, in a lot of ways, because you have a guy who not only was an elite player, but he's also a guy who has kind of worked behind the scenes for an NBA organization for a number of years. He's prepared, and I think that it's good for our league.
As part of that, adding Phil Martelli to that staff, does that kind of balance out the fact that he's never coached a game as a head coach?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some guys differ on that with you know, hiring a head coach on your staff. Some people feel like that's important. Some people don't feel strongly about that. I think that when you have a guy from the NBA that's coming in, I think you definitely need a couple college guys because there's some landmines that you have to avoid, primarily in the way of compliance, that you're just unaware of when you're in the NBA. I think I know Phil a little bit. I think he'll do an incredible job in terms of some of the other things to avoid being a first-time head coach that we all experienced our first couple years. So I would expect that he'll do a great job with that.
Chris, are your frustrations with the college game low enough and your challenges here high enough that you're still going to say that you have a strong preference for the college game? I mean, because John seemed like the quintessential college coach.
He did, yeah, he did, and he was so good for our game in a lot of ways. You know, I love our college game, love it, and I think, Lori, I think there's so much that people talk about in terms of our game and quote unquote potential demise of our game, and then you look at the TV ratings and the numbers, particularly in March, the best they've ever been, and one of the all-time rated national championship games, and we have a lot of really, really good people. And you know, I think obviously everybody's with one eye, keeping an eye on what's going to happen in the next year to 18 months regarding all of the NCAA stuff. I have frustrations, certainly, like a lot of my colleagues do, about some things with our game. At some point, maybe I'll get into that. But I love it. Yeah, I'm fascinated with the NBA game too, but that's more because I'm a coach and I enjoy watching it and studying it and seeing how different. The games are very different, and I'm sure John will see that here.
Are you familiar at all with Kevin Warren? And regardless of how qualified and hopeful you are about him, is it a little hard to see Jim Delaney say goodbye? Because after all, he was a guy whose reputation was such that he really put a lot of emphasis on basketball.
Yeah, he did, and a lot of it was because of his background. I'm excited about this hire. I'm excited about the commissioner. I think I don't know much at all about him, but everything I've heard has been super impressive. So I really am excited about the hire.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just a lot of talk today around Ohio State because of what Ryan Day did about mental health.
Yes.
You've got Coach Q watching out for the physical health of your players.
Yes.
The mental health, you've always seemed to take a very holistic approach to your program. What do you do to make sure your guys are where they need to be in that aspect?
Listen, it's a major issue, and I applaud Ryan for getting involved as he is. I think it's a tremendous. I just think it's tremendous what he and his wife are doing. And my wife and his wife have had a chance to talk a lot about what they're doing. So super excited to see that and support that in any way we can. I think it's interesting because that is a major issue for athletes. Mental health has become more and more of an issue in the last 5 to 10 years for our current athletes. And however you would like to speculate on whatever that is, and what are the causes. And a lot of people point to social media, and I think that is a real thing. I think social media is, and it's a major concern for me with a 9-year-old. I think it is a significant contributor to the struggles in the area of mental health with some of our athletes. And I know many of you are on social media in here, and good for you. I don't follow any of you. Not that you're not interesting, you're infinitely interesting. But I don't follow you because on all honesty, I don't like reading stuff about our program at times. And part of your job is to be objective, right, and critical at times, and that can create some degree of resentment. And so I just have never followed our local staff as good as they are. But it's a constant conversation with our players about mental health and the role that social media plays in that. And we're bringing in some people this summer actually to delve into that in more detail.
One more about sort of the future of the sport. You said obviously the TV ratings are great and the sport will be fine, but like when you see like a RJ Hampton going to New Zealand, and the number of underclassmen that are leaving and not going to the NBA, but just ready to sort of be done with college, does that concern you at all about the sport? And is there anything that you see as being something that would be helpful down the road to maybe sort of stem some of that tide as far as guys leaving but not going to the NBA?
Yeah, it's a significant issue. That there's no denying that. Your ability to manage your roster in a day and age where it's not like it used to be when we used to watch college basketball and you could identify with guys for 3 or 4 years in a lot of cases. And as a head coach, you're constantly trying to project what is your roster going to look like in the next year or two. And in college basketball, roster stability is up there in terms of recruiting and scheduling with some of the most important issues that you have to be on top of. So it's a significant conversation that we're having with our staff, because I do think that the number of guys that will professionalize, and we're not talking strictly the NBA, right? But the number of guys that will professionalize will probably increase. And there are different paths to the NBA. And then there are situations where guys are just gonna say, we're gonna professionalize because, there are different ways to be a paid pro athlete. So managing that, and that's part of the reason we'll almost always have a sit one transfer on our roster, in some cases two, because it stabilizes your roster in a day and age where there can be a lot of volatility.
And sort of against that backdrop, you have a guy like Andre Weston who has been through just about everything possible with the program since he got here. How much are you leaning on him this summer, and how important is he to what you guys might do this season?
He's gonna be critical for us. Andre's as I've said, he's a great example of a young man who's just gotten better every year and really provided some great leadership for us last year. We're not in the NCAA tournament without him. I think he's gotta take the next step as a player and as a leader, and we challenged him in that area. I think that is a significant area for us. Listen, we all know that this is a critical summer for us in a lot of ways, because we have a young team. I am excited about the fact that we have, Andre, who's certainly got some experience and shown some ability to do some things, and then a couple other guys that have shown the ability to lead. CJ Walker's done that, Caleb and some other guys. So, but it's nice to see a 4-year guy. And it's nice to see him continue to grow as a player.
Can you talk about roster stability and bring in a sit one transfer? Did you think about that before bringing in CJ Walker, or is that something that you've sort of realized could be beneficial to the future of the program?
No, that's been a thought of mine for the last couple of years. And I think with each passing year, I think about it more and more because of the volatility within a roster. It's a variety of things, right? It's professionalization. It's the reality that you're probably going to have a transfer at some point. So you're figuring out all those things. But yeah, I thought about it with CJ as well.
And then just with Justice, bringing him in, what attracted you to him? And did you think that going to California would be your next move for a transfer?
Yeah, not really. We did not. What we honestly did is sat down and did a lot of video work and looked at what our needs were going to be, and then really tried to work the phones. We had a limited previous connection with him. Shragi had recruited him a little bit, but you can say that about most everybody who's playing college basketball right now. And Jake Diebler had a little bit as well. So there's a little bit of a connection, but honestly, we just watched him, and we really felt like, and I feel like for this year's team, I have some of the same concerns. And we felt like we needed a guy that had the ability to get to the paint and create free throw opportunities, and be a presence, a physical presence. And he's been able to do that. And it was right there at the end in terms of, did he want to stay? Because Cal was an option as well, staying at Cal. Did he want to stay out on the West Coast or come east? And we're excited to have him.
How are you taking to the new recruiting rules just in general, and the ability to go to the NBA camp, which attracts a pretty good collection of players? Just, are you excited about what you might see there?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this summer looks like for us all. I think some of the changes have been good. It's added more recruiting opportunities for coaches, which I think there'll probably be some pushback in the future in terms of, do we need this a bit more, this many more days? But I'll be interested to see after the summer. I think we'll have a better feel for kind of what the changes look like. Everybody's going to be converging on Virginia next weekend, so that'll be interesting.
The NCAA pitched this one part of it back to the state association. And
yeah.
It sounds like June 29th at Capitol, they're going to have a pretty good event with what I've seen already, over 100 players from the state of Ohio 700 schools in Ohio, just how important is it to have a comprehensive event? And it looks like sophomores, juniors, and seniors alike will all be at this one-stop shop, I guess, for college coaches to come in. What, is this gonna be a good thing, or what do you kind of foresee out of what you know about that?
I think it's good for a lot of schools. It'll be good for us, but it's also good, really good for a lot of the smaller schools.
Yeah.
When years ago, I used to go to the Top 100 camp, when I was an assistant at Taylor in Indianapolis, in Indiana. It was a great camp for a variety of players. You had guys like Division III guys along with guys like Gordon Hayward playing in it. So I think it'll be a really good event for a lot of schools. Really good.
Is Joey Lane one of your social media experts that's coming in to talk to the team?
No, but he could. Yeah, he could. He's as good as anybody at that. But we're gonna have a few guys come in and talk about it for sure.
And when's the scrimmage against the Warriors again?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think we're gonna probably pass on that one. But we'll see. We're actually close to nailing down our scrimmage.
My wife reminded me this, what were you doing 2 years ago today?
What's the date? Ooh. I think I was at a golf outing. When was the press conference here?
It was the 5th in the morning, at noon.
I was at a golf outing in Michigan, raising money for Greg Camp, who's a coach at Oakland, for kids, cancer research, and was on the 17th hole, and was about to hit a shot, and had some guys, there's a bunch of coaches, it was coaches there and media people and other people, had guys on the other hole yell over, hey, did you hear? What do you think about that, Chris? And I just kept my mouth shut and hit my ball.
I get it.
Not very well. Not very well. Yeah, not very well. But it's been interesting because I was thinking about this the other day as I was walking through the airport. That certainly this is our second full summer here, and you feel a lot more comfortable. Your second full summer with everything. And I used to get startled when I'd walk in the airport and people would shout OH at me. I stumbled and didn't really know what to say, and now I'm pretty quick on the trigger there with IO. So it's been a good couple of years.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.